World War II. Nazis are killing civilians. It was called the sardine method. Victims laid in layers, like sardines in a jar. An effective way to exterminate many people in a short time. But this film will not be about the Nazis. Hands tied behind the back. An expertly aimed shot in the neck. And the fall into a huge mass grave. These people were not killed by the Nazis. They were killed by one of the Allies, the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was killing people in this way for many years, both before and after it joined the Allies. These victims had no memorials. They were buried in anonymous mass graves. The murderous power that killed them, and the powers that collaborated with the murderer, were never actually prepared to talk about them. The memory of millions of innocent victims was erased from history. Youth throughout the world likes to make jokes using popular symbols of the past. While the Nazi swastika is considered to be a bad joke, Soviet symbols are not. Communism, after all, was not Nazism. It was about equality and harmony. There was nothing wrong with the idea itself. Well, actually, there was. There was something which made it different from the other utopias. Lenin believed in what he called the war of classes, which meant that the ultimate harmony can only be reached after certain groups of people are killed.
Initially, when communists come to power, and that doesn't matter where, let it be in Russia, in Poland, in Cuba, in Nicaragua, it doesn't matter, in China. Initially, they destroy about 10% of the population, and that's very specific. This is used not just to kill enemies, they're not enemies, it's to restructure the fabric of society. It's a social engineering. Top intellectuals, best workers, best engineers, they would kill them all. And then they will try to restructure the new society.
Hang at least 100 kulaks, execute the hostages, do it in such a way that people for hundreds of miles around will see and tremble. Lenin. In 1917, the communists seized power. Lenin now had a chance to apply Marxism to real life.
Those who resisted were shot. There were terrible massacres against resisting peasants. And again, nobody knows exactly how many people died, but we're talking about 10 million or more.
But even the most ruthless terror could not break popular resistance, particularly in the ethnic republics, where communist terror was entwined with national oppression, as it was in Ukraine. On September the 11th, 1932, Stalin wrote to his associate Kaganovich, "The situation in Ukraine is very bad. If we don't take steps now, we may lose Ukraine." Several meetings of Stalin's inner circle resulted in a plan of action. It was an horrific plan.
In that winter, 32 to 33, all food supplies in the Ukraine were taken away. A huge cordon was created so that nobody could leave.
Initially, people didn't die. Leftover supplies of grain and vegetables kept them alive. But this was not part of Stalin's plan.
So he ordered NKVD to confiscate all grain, all food from these areas. By doing that, he knew he's condemning them to death.
картошку, свеклу, капусту, соленая капуста в бочке, с бочкою. Куда забираешь, садить же нужно. Нужно посадочку, никто не забрать, и все.
Когда было изъято продовольствие у крестьян, им еще и запретили выезжать, искать его в других местах. Купить, обменять или заработать это продовольствие.
And then the hunger began.
Они умирали. Причем в города их тоже не пускали, старались не пускать. Там стояли заградительные отряды, которые ссаживали этих умирающих, голодающих с поездов. И некоторые умирали прямо вот на вокзалах или на подъездных путях. Там к Харькову, Киеву.
Ukrainians were dying torturously slowly. Children cried agonizingly for bread. Many lost their sense of fear. They went to the NKVD-guarded fields to collect single ears of grain. They were shot on the spot. But most of the victims died slowly, at home. Special NKVD units raided people's homes to collect the dead bodies. They received 200 grams of bread for every dead body they delivered.
Она заходит. Ага, кто у вас здесь помер? Давай. И там до одной ночи женщина сама лежит, опухшая, понимаешь. Так, говорит, давай ее сейчас заберем. Что она все равно помрет завтра, за ней еще ехать нужно будет. Сегодня она просит, что да я же еще живу, я жить хочу, я.
Скинули з вода. Як стануть землею закопувати, то я мала не ходила на кладбище, аж вони такі вже дорослі ходили. Казали, земля ворушилася, як закриють цю землю.
Many were buried alive.
Это для меня место святое, потому что здесь лежат жертвы Голодомора, в том числе и мои близкие родственники, в частности, моя бабушка.
Ten years later, the Nazis will exterminate millions of Jews. They will take away their gold, melt it down, and deposit the bars in Swiss banks. We don't know what communists did with the gold confiscated from these people, and was there any gold? What we do know is what communists did with the grain taken from them. It was exported to the West. Millions upon millions of tons. Despite the famine, the export of Ukrainian grain was increased to the maximum level. The Western media reported both on the scale and character of the famine genocide. Ukrainians were being exterminated in front of the whole world. But the world did nothing to help them. 7 million people were starved to death in the space of 1 year. Mankind has never seen a more efficient extermination program than the one in Ukraine during the winter of 1932 and 33. Soviet society was the first communist society on Earth. It was a huge social experiment. The agonizing death of 7 million Ukrainians had a wider meaning in the distorted vision of the communist architects.
You have to make the revolution, then establish the dictatorship of proletariat, and then the birth of the new man can be possible.
The birth of the new man was the ultimate aim of Marxism, breeding a new evolutionary form of human being who will think, look, and act differently. But communists were not alone in this endeavor.
Wir müssen einen neuen Menschen erziehen und zu einer neuen Lebensform zu führen.
Hitler's National Socialism was also about creating a new man.
In both systems you have an ideology which has the ambition of creating a new man. That means that both systems don't agree with human nature as it is. They are at war with nature, with human nature. This is the root of totalitarianism. And you find it both in Nazi. In Nazi, it's an ideology based on false biology, and communism is based on false sociology. But both systems have an ambition of being scientific and resting on a scientific basis.
The main scientist of Nazism, Alfred Rosenberg, confessed to the Nuremberg Tribunal that Hitler had misused the idea of National Socialism. Indeed, the idea, in the Nazi view, wasn't so bad after all. Healthy, beautiful, blonde, and happy people. A future society, and without handicapped or Jews, nearly a paradise. For some reason, National Socialism did not work out, just as the Soviet socialism didn't.
Was ist geschehen? Sag mir, wo die Blumen sind. Mädchen plötzlich.
Both left thousands of mass graves, millions of murdered people. Was it coincidence?
I don't think many people know that only socialists publicly advocated genocide in the 19th, 20th centuries. I think that's a very little known fact, and it seems shocking if you mention it. I've lectured on it here and in other universities, and it's always greeted with a sense of shock. First appeared in January